Governor.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm gonna start just by fessing up to something that I tried to do that I fortunately failed at. I don't often tout my failure, but there was a time some number of years ago, Governor, where I thought that your future should take you to the United States House of Representatives. I tried to convince you to run for Congress, and you had other plans. Fast forward many years, thank God I was wrong, and thank you for the remarkable job you've done as Governor of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be with you.
It's really great to be with you, and I have obviously, it's a very serious conversation to have, but I wanted to break the ice just a little bit, if I may, with just some quick questions just to loosen you up a little, if that's all right.
Do I not seem loose? I feel pretty loose. Mark was just talking about seeing me when I was born. At that moment, I feel pretty loose.
All right, very quickly. Favorite Eagle of all time?
You know what? I was on Eagles pregame live just yesterday before the Birds played the Steelers. Birds beat the Steelers, by the way. And I got to sit next to Jaws, Ron Jaworski, and it was just a normal day. I was a little bit starstruck, so I guess I'd go with Jaws. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Better play-by-play announcer, Merrill Reese, Gene Hart.
Oh my God! Come on.
All right, I'll move on.
That's like asking me to pick between my kids.
I'm moving on. But there are some people here who don't, a handful who don't really get this at all, and my staff who's saying, why are you doing this?
Merrill Reese, by the way, is about to get inducted into the Hall of Fame they do once a year, they do an announcer, and Merrill just won that award this year. Pretty amazing.
He is amazing. Best Philly movie ever made?
Rocky.
Easy, thank you. An appropriate question perhaps at an AJC dinner, provolone or Swiss?
I do enjoy provolone, but I'm not a cheesesteak guy, so
okay,
come on.
All right.
We have a kosher governor's residence. I can't be out. I can't be out eating cheesesteaks.
It was a bit of a trick question, I'll admit. And then we'll just finish this off. Favorite Israeli food?
Falafel, but not from some fancy restaurant, though I do love Goldie's and I love Michael, but on some stand in the middle of nowhere in Israel. It's always delicious.
This also gives me an opportunity to acknowledge Tzach Sar, who is the Deputy Consul General of Israel. Thank you very much for being here. All right, I tried. Thanks for playing along.
Did I not do well? You did try.
You did great. You did great. Thank you.
No more lightning round?
I have more.
Now we got to do the serious stuff?
We do.
Okay.
And frankly, look, your answer to the silly question about cheesesteaks is the perfect lead-in to my first question for you. I didn't realize this until I was preparing for this, but the first governor, I grew up in Bethlehem, the first governor I remember was Governor Milton Shep.
That's right.
Who was born Milton Shapiro. So in that respect, you're actually the second Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania's history. He was governor from 1971 to 79, but you are Governor Shapiro. You're a proud Jew who dismisses a question about cheesesteaks because you have a kosher home. You quote Pirkei Avot in your life as governor and the speeches that you give. It's so clear, and everyone has come to know how important Shabbat dinner is for you with your family. Your Judaism matters to you a lot. Yeah. And for those of us who are so involved in the community, it's something that we admire, but I would love to hear a little bit more about how it informs what you do and why it's so important.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, I know we had the sort of silly lightning round there to start, but I want to just say on a serious note, how grateful I am to AJC for the important work that you do every day, how grateful I am to Ted, who's been a friend of mine for more than a decade, how thankful I am to the leaders here who raise money and do this important work, from Mark, who I think asked me to do this like a year ago and has checked in with me each month to make sure I was going to do it. I'm proud to do it. And to the Liebmans and everyone, I appreciate what y'all do. I just celebrated, Lori noted the other night, that I've been in public office for 20 years. And I'm a proud public servant. I think public service is a noble profession. And the reason I am in public service, and it's fitting that my dad is here tonight, is because of my family and because of my faith. Both draw me to service. Our faith teaches us that, as you mentioned, I quote Pirkei Avot, I quote it in a synagogue, I'll quote it at a Kiwanis Club. I was proud to quote it from the pulpit at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, just a couple months ago, that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. Meaning each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, get in the game, and do our part. Now, doing our part can come in a lot of different ways. Some people do their part in a courtroom, some people do their part in a business, some people do their part through charitable work, like here at AJC. For me, my part is through public service. My part is through serving my community, and I'm honored to do it. I share that with you because as I was getting ready to launch my campaign for governor, you may recall I was Attorney General at the time, a group of us came together and said, well, how do we want to kind of reintroduce you to the good people of Pennsylvania as you launch your campaign? You could start by talking about a policy you're for, or some initiative you want to get passed. But actually what I wanted to do was talk about the issue I just mentioned to you. What drew me to want to serve in the first place? Why I was even contemplating running to be your governor. And so we had a long conversation about what motivates me, Ted, and why I do this. And to me, being able to bring together family and faith was really important. And the best way to show that is by doing what I do every single Friday night since I was a kid, and what we continue to do, and that is having Shabbat dinner with my family. And so the first ad in my campaign was all of us sitting around the Shabbat dinner table. Now, fun fact for all of you, I think we filmed it like on a Tuesday, so it really wasn't Shabbat. My kids remind me of that. But we did have everything on the table. And what was so interesting about it was after the ad started running, and I would show up in communities where there aren't a lot of Jews, if any Jews in Pennsylvania, folks would grab me and say, hey, I saw your ad. That was great. I want to tell you what Sunday lunch is like after I get home from church. I want to tell you what Christmas dinner is like in our family. I want you to know what we experience when we leave our place of worship. And in a lot of ways, it actually brought me closer together with the community. And we were able to see one another in a deeper way. I think faith has allowed me to get into living rooms and conversations and communities in a much deeper way than perhaps I ever could before. And so I think it is critically important, if you want to be a public servant, to be true to who you are and express that to folks. So I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the way I've lived my life. I'm proud of the way Lori and I are raising our 4 children. And I appreciate the fact that the good people of Pennsylvania acknowledge that and open themselves up and share that back with me as I go out serving them as their governor.
Do you think, it's interesting, the importance of Shabbat dinner, part of it obviously is your Judaism, but it also is anchoring for your family to have, and for everyone that you interact with to know that on Friday nights, that's the time for your family.
Yeah.
There's something there in a time of really polarizing politics and fragmentation of society. There's something there that we should learn from, right?
Well, I just think making sure you're committed to family, you're committed to yourself at some key moments each day, each week is really important. Lori and I live crazy lives right now, running all over the place. I'm not complaining. I asked for this, and I love what I do. I hope you can tell the joy that I have every day in serving you as your governor. And no matter where we are during the week, we always know Friday night we're going to be together. We always know that it's going to be a moment where we can be with the kids and have conversations with them. And I'll be honest with you, Ted, I mean, some of it, of course, is the prayers and the rituals and the religious aspect of it, but so much of it is just the family part of it, and being grounded in that, and knowing that that will be our moment during the week, whether we're at the governor's residence or our home in Montgomery County. We are always together Friday night, and it's something we don't compromise on. I think it's important that you've got to set those boundaries, you got to say what's important, and that's exactly what we do.
It's especially important to have time to be together in this period where for now almost 15 months, the community has really, in so many ways, has struggled.
Yeah.
We had the deadliest attack on the Jewish community since the Holocaust. The equivalent, just in terms that people in America can try to understand, the 1,200 people, the equivalent of 45,000 Americans, God forbid, if you use the same ratios, the equivalent of 7,000 people being taken hostage. Now, still 100 hostages still being held beneath Gaza. It's been really hard for the community. And yes, Israel has fortunately made advances, and from a geostrategic standpoint is doing better. But this has still been really difficult for the community, for those of us who care about Israel, and then layer on top of that the anti-Semitism that we've seen that you've been so outspoken about in the work that you do. How, again, just given what's at your core, is it hard sometimes with the way that we're feeling, the way that you feel as a committed Jew in the face of all of this, to speak about it? Do you ever feel that you need to hold back because this is all so personal to you?
I never feel like I need to hold back. I think it is always important to speak out. But I also think it is important that we have two separate conversations. One about anti-Semitism and the other about Israel. When it comes to anti-Semitism, I think it is critically important that folks understand there is no nuance in that conversation. Anti-Semitism, hatred, bigotry in all forms, it is not okay. And everyone in a position of public trust, everyone has a responsibility to speak and act with moral clarity, to speak out against it. And it doesn't matter who is sharing those sentiments. If they're members of your own party, if they're people who you otherwise might agree with on some other issue, we have a responsibility to speak out against it, and we have a responsibility as a community to be unified against anti-Semitism, hatred, bigotry in all forms. There is no nuance on that. When it comes to the issue of Israel and foreign policy and Middle East policy, that's a far more gray area. And I think it is important to continue to speak out in support of Israel, and I think it is also acceptable if one wants to respectfully criticize a policy coming from the Israeli government. There is a difference there. And so what I try and do is not hold back in any way, but to make sure folks understand we are having two different conversations. We got to speak out and stop anti-Semitism in our communities. And yes, we can express an opinion as it relates to the policies in Israel or by the Israeli government. And I think it is also critically important to acknowledge the very real fact that there is anti-Semitism in this country, there is anti-Semitism in this Commonwealth, and it is on the left and it is on the right. And there is no one party that has a clean record on it, and we've got to make sure that no matter who is putting forth those words of hate, they are condemned. And I try and do that every day from my post as a governor and my post just in my private life to speak out against any form of hatred and bigotry.
There are, just along those lines, AJC is fiercely nonpartisan in the way that we do our work, and recognize and talk constantly, try to make the point exactly the way you have, that there's anti-Semitism wherever it is, we have to call it out. And but that it's harder for some to see it or to call it out when it's among their friends in their own party than if it's in the other party. This was something that I dealt with as a member of Congress, but when conversations turned to you during the election and people referred to you as Genocide Josh.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, there are those, I think we have to acknowledge it's on both sides, and clearly there are those on the far left who don't want to criticize Israel but have now taken the position that Israel essentially has no right to exist, that then bring that in to that kind of language, which is clearly anti-Semitic in the way it's applied. How do you deal with that?
So I must tell you, it did not upset me, and it didn't affect me. What did upset me was the way those attacks against me made other people feel. You know, as I was traveling across this Commonwealth, across the country, folks would come over to me and tell me, you know, I saw what they said about you, and it was making them feel less safe in their communities. It was making them feel less safe in their schools or on their college campuses. That upset me. And on that, I felt a responsibility to try and lift them up and strengthen them and let them know that they should be proud of who they are. I'm proud of who I am, and sort of help them brush off the noise and recognizing, and I think this is an important point, that while a lot of that noise did exist, and it is empirically true that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and thank God for groups like AJC doing this work, the vast, vast, vast majority of people that I come across every day, they're good people. They're not bigots. They're not spewing hate. They're actually looking to try and figure out ways in which we can bring people together. That is what I see. And so I'm comforted by that every day. I'm not offended or upset by the attacks that people make against me, even the anti-Semitic attacks against me. What I get upset about, what I worry about, is how it makes other people feel. And whether that causes them to retreat or causes them to maybe not do something they were going to do or not go somewhere where they were going to go. That is upsetting to me. And I try and spend as much time as I can with the people who are affected by that to try and make sure they have the strength to continue to go forward and lead by example in a way that gives them the strength that they need to move forward.
And sometimes, while the overwhelming majority of people are good, and I agree with you, and I think it's important for us to realize that the data tells us that the vast majority of Americans are supportive of Israel as well, and are overwhelmingly opposed to anti-Semitism. Small numbers can do real damage, and that's what we saw on a number of college campuses where the protests, some of them going back to October 8th, which were not protests obviously about the Israeli government, but just protests in support of Hamas. Some of these protests in support of a terror group really put people at risk. And you were very clear in the way that you approached that right here in Philadelphia and around the state. How should, now that we're 15 months in, AJC has worked with universities around the country to try to ensure that they're doing what they need to fight anti-Semitism. From your perspective, how are they doing, how are we doing 15 months later?
Well, I commend AJC for the important work they've done on college campuses. And I don't know if John Fry is still here, the president of Temple University, an outstanding leader who was at Drexel University for some time and now is at Temple. He's an example of a strong leader dealing with these challenges on campus, and there are others to be sure. Look, I think it is critically important that we protect people's First Amendment rights to be able to protest on campus, protest on our streets. They, of course, have to follow the rules of the road, whether on campus or in a city, Commonwealth, you name it. But they should be able to express themselves. But that expression is not okay if you're violating the rules of the campus, the rules of the city or the community. It's also not okay if it puts other people at risk. Universities have a moral and a legal responsibility to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and to this country to keep all students safe on campus. And for some universities, I think they were willing to forego that responsibility, or it got a little bit out of balance. Some universities were willing to accept a little bit of hate over here, but no hate over here. And that's not okay. Hate and bigotry in all forms needs to be condemned. All students need to be safe on campus. And yes, there should be places where students can express themselves and have their views heard. So while I realize there's a lot of gray area when it comes to figuring out exactly where that line is, I do think it's important that everybody adhere to those basic principles. And there are many colleges and universities here in Pennsylvania that are. I think candidly, Penn lost its way. They are working to get back. I think, I don't know if she's still here, Susanna Lax-Adler and others. Susanna has done really wonderful work. And there's some important work there happening under their interim president. I think they are moving in the right direction there. And many other universities are as well. And so I hope, to get to the heart of your question, 15 months later, we're in a position where students feel safe to be able to both go to class and to be able to protest within the bounds of the rules on campus, and that we continue to be balanced in our approach there. I think it is also important not to lose sight in this conversation that a lot of what we were seeing on campus really didn't have a lot to do with the students, but had a whole lot to do with some faculty. And I think it is important that university leaders are holding faculty accountable as well, so that they are teaching actual facts and that they are not encouraging students to break the rules, and that we have order and discipline on campus as well when it comes to the faculty.
And when there is messaging sent, whether from faculty or from student groups or from other places on campus that say you are not welcome in this group or frankly in this classroom simply because you are a Zionist, simply because you believe in the modern state of Israel, that also can't be acceptable because of what it says to the message that it sends to students and how it puts people at risk.
Yeah, without question. I mean, if you're a student on one of these campuses, you literally have a legal right to be safe in these communities and on these campuses. And university leaders have to remember that. I gotta tell you, these students, they're scared. You know, Hanukkah last year was sort of right around the time that these protests were really kicking up, and students were incredibly scared. I heard from a number of students at Penn who reached out to me, reached out to my wife, and we decided to forego lighting our Chanukiah for the first night at the governor's residence, and got in the trucks, drove to Penn, and we lit the Chanukiot at Penn's Hillel with those students. We wanted to make sure that they knew their governor, their first lady had their backs, and that they were going to be safe on campus, and that we were going to make sure that university leaders ensured their safety and their well-being on campus. Again, I want to be really clear. Students have a right to protest. Their voices should be heard. I think students have helped usher in change in this country for generations. We want to hear their voices, but not at the expense of the safety and well-being of any other student. That's where you got to draw a line.
You've talked a lot about building a coalition to combat hatred, and you've invoked Rabbi Heschel, and you've invoked his work with Dr. King during the Civil Rights era. And I think it's true for so many of us that having invested so much time in those really important relationships, there was some disappointment with response after October 7th. And yet, the only option from our perspective is to double down. One, because it's the right thing to do, and two, because the Jewish community represents 0.02% of the population in the world. We need allies. Yeah. And this has been really central to AJC, and I know Stephanie's son is here, co-chair of Papaja, And I think Anthony Rosado, co-chair of Latino Jewish Coalition, is here, and I appreciate their being here and their leadership. This is a really important way to continue to combat anti-Semitism and simultaneously to make sure that Zionists, the people who believe in Israel, aren't excluded. Can you just talk about, I know this is important to you, can you talk about how to build those kinds of coalitions that will help our community and beyond?
You have to build coalitions if you want to make any progress here in this Commonwealth or in the country. I'm actually the only governor in the entire country with a divided legislature, right? So I've got a state Senate led by Republicans, state House led by Democrats. It's like I literally can't get a bill to my desk unless some number of Democrats and some number of Republicans support it. And so you're forced to have dialogue. You're forced to come together. That's naturally who I am, trying to bring people together. But I want you to know it is required here in Pennsylvania if we want to make progress. And we made a hell of a lot of progress, fixing an unconstitutional education system, cutting taxes 6 times, hiring over 1,000 new state troopers and police officers in Pennsylvania, and passing some of the most sweeping criminal justice reforms ever in the history of Pennsylvania. At the same time, we've been able to invest $3 billion in private capital investment to create over 130,000 new jobs. I've only been governor 2 years. We're getting a lot of stuff done. I share this with you because we understand the critical importance of building coalitions. And I'll tell you who else understood that? The person whose portrait hangs in my office right above my desk, William Penn. I share that with you because when William Penn helped build what is now the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, he built this as a place that would be warm and welcoming for all, where people of all different faiths would be forced together to actually work together to make progress in this Commonwealth. That was his vision. And I view it as my responsibility, as someone who's been handed the baton from William Penn, and actually a whole lot of people in between, of course, to pick up on the work that was done before I got here and to continue it in the spirit that Penn started. A spirit where we want to make sure we respect people no matter what they look like, where they come from, who they love, who they pray to, and that those folks are represented around the table. And when they're around the table and they feel like they have the freedom and the safety to be able to talk and to share their ideas and their views and their policies, that's what's going to allow us to build a coalition to be able to get meaningful things done, to be able to make progress. You mentioned Heschel and King. I've had a lot of conversations about Heschel and King with Reverend Warnock, who I think is one of the great leaders in our country. He gave me the privilege of being able to speak at the pulpit at Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Dr. King was, of course, the prayer leader there. We spoke about Heschel and King from Ebenezer, the need to be able to bring the Black community and the Jewish community closer together to be able to do this important work. My friend David's here. He's done work with Operation Understanding and other organizations like that bring people from different walks of life together. And if we can do that more, we can understand one another, we can reduce the amount of hate and bigotry in our community, and we can make progress. In the spirit of William Penn, to fill in the work that Heschel and King started, and to be able to create a safer community for all of us.
I want to follow up on this note of bipartisanship. Sure. You talked about the division in the legislature in Harrisburg. And I want to just focus on Israel for a moment. Sorry, it's been a long time since I lived in Pennsylvania. But
you're still one of us. You're a Birds fan. It's okay.
Thank you very much.
And he went to Camp Ramah. I mean, look, this guy's got the whole pedigree.
It's the Lehigh Valley in my blood. Look, if you think about support for Israel, in Pennsylvania, there were 2 pro-Israel Democratic senators. There will now be a pro-Israel Democratic senator in Senator Fetterman, whose support has been nothing short of spectacular. You have strong Republican support, including from my good friend, Congressman Fitzpatrick, from the area as well. And in many ways, I think it's a good reminder of the importance of bipartisan support for Israel. Is as we look into the future, given the challenges that Israel faces, is that Pennsylvania model of bipartisan support from both senators and bipartisan support from House members and a Democratic governor, is that the model that we should continue to expect to see around the country? And will both parties continue to be as strongly pro-Israel as they should be?
I hope so. Look, I'm a proud Democrat, and I want to make sure that the Democratic Party continues to stand with Israel, and I'm going to continue to do my part to raise my voice to ensure that it does. I lament the fact that in recent years, the issue of Israel, so to speak, has become weaponized in our political system. I think Israel is far safer and far stronger when the relationship that elected officials in America have is on a really bipartisan or nonpartisan basis. And I think there have been some organizations, quite candidly, that have tried to throw a monkey wrench in that idea and instead have injected too much partisanship into that relationship. In the long run, that makes Israel less safe. Maybe in the short run, given the way the political dynamics are in the country today, it could work to Israel's advantage. But mark my words, in the long run, politicizing America's relationship with Israel is not in the best interests of Israel long-term from a safety and a security standpoint. And so I believe the Pennsylvania model is the right way, where we've got Republicans and Democrats alike standing up and speaking out in support of Israel. And by the way, challenging Israel where Israel needs to be challenged, and also making sure that we are speaking with a unified bipartisan voice against anti-Semitism. And where anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, no matter what political party or affiliation or left-leaning or right-leaning person said it or group said it, that we join together in standing up and speaking out against it. I think there's something to our Pennsylvania model, and I'd like to see it more across the country.
Great, thank you, and so would we, as governor. Couple more. I should say you'll appreciate. I was in politics, so I never feel any time constraints. But you're the governor, and I know you have some, and I literally have no idea how much time we have. So I'm just going to keep going till they pull the plug. There are some. I understand there are some Barrack students here tonight. Is that right? Do I have that right? Yeah.
All right.
So I had the good fortune of visiting Barrack, as you know. I missed you when I was coming through town. Can you just talk about the importance of that education and the grounding in Jewish education to this whole conversation that we're having and to your work?
Look, I was blessed that my parents gave me the gift of a Schechter education and then a Kiba, now Barrack education. I was blessed for a whole lot of reasons. One was a great quality education. And two, I met a girl in the 9th grade there who I've been married to for 27 years, and now she's the First Lady of Pennsylvania. So it gave me the love of my life, and now all 4 of our children either are in those schools or have been through those schools. And I think what that education taught me is an awareness of the world around me, making sure that I understand I've got a responsibility to serve and help others. The notion of tikkun olam was kind of infused in everything that we did there and what our kids continue to learn there. And I think it is certainly not something everyone has to choose. But for me, it was a wonderful choice that was made for me when I was younger, and now to be able to turn around and make that choice and be able to give that to our kids is really, really important.
Just to follow up on that, since your father's sitting here, the interest in public service started where?
So I think the interest in serving others certainly came in large measure due to my education and what I learned at Foreman Schechter, though, fun fact, I am 12-1 in elections in my lifetime. The only election I ever lost, Marlon Groen will remember this, I think, was when I ran for student council in the 11th grade at Akiba to impress a girl, and I got whooped in that race. The girl married me, which was good, but that's the only race I ever lost. So I can tell you, I did not exactly hone my political skills at Akiba. It really was just more that I learned there about helping and serving others. And truth be told, I thought I was going to be a doctor like my dad. I thought that was going to be a way I could help others. And then my freshman year of college, I learned that apparently to be a doctor nowadays, you got to pass organic chemistry and calculus. And true story, in the same day my freshman year of college, I flunked out of pre-med. I got cut from the men's basketball team. And someone knocked on my dorm room door, Ted, that night and said, hey, you should run for student government. I was like, I remember how that worked. I lost. I don't want to do it. And he said, no, you got nothing else going on in your life. You should give it a shot. I actually did, and I got into it. And that was sort of the beginning of me taking an interest in politics. That day back in college when I ran and actually won that race for student council.
Last thing, when I talked about the hook, I didn't expect it to come so soon.
Mark is right here.
Okay, really quickly, by the way, I lost a race, fifth grade student class president, and thank God I did not marry Ann Turner. I did marry Jill instead.
Jill is very happy.
Trust me, we're all very happy about the way. But she's great. I hope she's having a good life somewhere. So last
that was off the record, I assume.
Yeah, please, no one look her up on Facebook.
Yeah.
I want to thank you really so much for this conversation, and I want to give you a chance to end with this. For all of the challenges that we're facing, it's kind of a heavy conversation.
Yeah.
What is it that you're most hopeful about at this moment, thinking about our community and the future and your life and your world?
Yeah. You know, I get asked a lot, like, how do you stay so optimistic and so upbeat given all the challenges there are out in the world? And there are so many challenges. There's challenges like what we're talking about here tonight with anti-Semitism. There's other challenges that the world is confronting, and probably another 40 days or so, we're going to confront even more challenges in this country. But what I think keeps me so up and so hopeful every day is the privilege I have to serve as your governor and travel around to different communities and different neighborhoods and just meet people who are doing remarkable things every day. It is a privilege I wish every Pennsylvanian had, to go and to see these nonprofits who are doing life-saving and life-changing work, to see the incredible work that's happening in some of our skyscrapers here in Philly and our farmlands out in rural communities across Pennsylvania. There are so many people who are literally changing the world, doing tikkun olam in their neighborhoods. And you know what? They're not down by the news cycle that I know really can bum a lot of people out. These people give me hope, and these people fuel my energy every day to go out and do this work as governor, and they make me optimistic and hopeful. And so while I leave you with this, while I understand the critically important role AJC plays to continue to combat hatred and bigotry and anti-Semitism, and you do a great job doing that work, while we're focused on those negative things that we've got to combat, I hope you'll also take a moment to appreciate the positive in our communities and understand that there is so much good out there and so many people doing so much good. And that is what fuels me. That's what keeps me up and excited. And that is what I think, really in many ways in the spirit of Penn, we get to see every day in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we need to continue to do this hard work that AJC calls us to do, but let's never lose sight of the positivity that's out there that fuels my optimism every day.
We're so grateful. Governor Shapiro, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks. It was fun. Thank you. Really appreciate it.